If you're joining us this evening, welcome to SVPMA's May 2025 meeting. And this meeting is online. If you have friends afterwards that you wish had joined for this evening's meeting, please point them towards our YouTube, and we try and get the recordings posted up on our channel within a couple of weeks of the event itself. This evening's speaker, I'm very excited. We've had some great pre-conversations before the meeting, but I'm very happy to introduce David Schneer, co-founder of Merrill Research, and he helps companies bring new products to market, hone their strategic communications. The company uses both qualitative and quantitative research methodologies. As a behavioral scientist and a nonverbal intelligence expert, he delves into the motivations behind consumer behavior, deciphering subtle cues that reveal true preferences. So one of our jobs as product managers is to really make sure that we are building the right thing, and that we are on target and we have enough of a sense of where our customers are, that we can tune and adjust our individual product roadmaps, and optimize for these real customers out there. It's not just a persona that somebody has scribbled onto a whiteboard. So really hoping to get some feedback. We've got some new twists with AI. And so David will be talking a little bit about the use of AI, and body language, and a lot of other things that we tend not to think of when we're just dealing with machines. So this is the as hard of a problem as dealing with the technology we all do, is dealing with people as a whole. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to David and look forward to his presentation this evening.
Thomas, thank you so much. And thank you, Debashish, for inviting me to speak here before the Silicon Valley Product Managers Association. It's truly an honor given the association's heritage in the Valley. So how did I get here today? Well, by blogging. And let me explain. I'm going to pull up. Here we go. Can you all see that? And y'all can hear me, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Coming through loud and clear, and we can see the slides.
All right. So long before I was a researcher, I was a journalist. Back in the days when we actually wrote articles. Okay. But several years ago, my social media team began urging me to write blogs. And, I cried, what? I'm a journalist. We don't write blogs. We write articles. I don't need no stinking blogs. And so this went on for, I don't know, a couple of years until we began to slowly realize that nobody was reading my articles. And so I began to blog. And this is true. But soon after I started blogging, I decided to write a blog about how product management can use research. And so I don't know if you folks saw this, but I wrote this blog, and the next day, wouldn't you know it, I get an email from Debashish asking me if I would please speak to his association. And I'm thinking, wow, this stuff really works. So Debashish, thank you so much. I'm really, really glad that I was able to hit a nerve, and I'm really excited to be here today. So, you know, who am I and why is it that you should believe anything that I tell you today? Um, First of all, uh, people ask me what it is that I do. And I tell them that I tell other companies that their babies are ugly, right? We work with very large, multi-billion dollar, multi national companies that have huge product pipelines. And despite their vast wealth, they can't afford to fund all these projects. So they come to companies like us to help them vet these projects out. Okay. And we do that through several types of methodologies that Tom mentioned earlier in the introduction. We do that through the use of quantitative research and qualitative research. And I'm fairly certain that everybody here knows the difference. If you don't, let me know. I'm happy to back up and explain it. But my colleague Angela handles really the heavy lifting for all of the large scale quantitative studies that we do that involve hundreds or thousands of interviews. Okay. But what I've been doing for the last 4 decades uh, is I've been traveling around the globe on behalf of some of the largest companies on the planet, talking to their customers, whether it be B2B professionals or consumers. And I'm asking them all sorts of things about what they like, what they don't like. How do they feel about this? How do they feel about that? And here's what I can tell you is that oftentimes what comes out of somebody's mouth is not what their bodies are saying. Okay. Now, I began to see this so much in my career that I began to study with some of the world's greatest experts and became one myself. I started in 2016 the Merrill Institute for Nonverbal Intelligence. And what I'm doing there is teaching people the very techniques that I use in my qualitative practice because uh, I have come across numerous instances where people, for whatever reason, just haven't leveled. We've been able to determine when that happens. We're going to show you today, okay? We're going to show you what we've done with qualitative research. We've taken it to the next level by including body language in qualitative research as well as artificial intelligence. All right. Now, uh, I'm going to share with you today a seminal study that I talk about in my new book, Backbone. And Backbone is a book that talks about what I think are the 7 salient traits that you need to have if you're going to be a qualitative researcher at this level. Okay. And uh, I'm going to share with you that study and what we actually learned and how we actually applied nonverbal intelligence and artificial intelligence in just a second. Um, Before I move on, I did want everybody to see um, that I got a #1 international bestseller seal on that book, and that's true. That's true. I was a #1 international bestseller on Amazon for about a minute, and I'm keeping it, my friends. I only sold 5 books, but hey, it was international. It was in one small country, and we got it. Um, all the shamelessness besides or going forward here, but one thing that is in my book in chapter 2, it's titled on preparedness. And I talk about how I messed up really badly early on in my career, so bad that it left such a horrible taste that it'll never happen again. And so I write about preparedness. And in preparing to speak before you tonight, I actually called up an old buddy of mine at the Chasm Group. And if you know the Chasm Group, they are probably one of the most storied, new product introduction consultancies around. These are the guys that brought us Crossing the Chasm, right? I sit on the board there and help them with their research. But I called my buddy Paul Weefels, who's the managing director, and I said, Paul, I'm going to go speak before Silicon Valley Product Marketing Management Association. I said, what advice would you have for them? And without hesitation, he gave me one word. One word. I'm going to stop now and ask anybody if they think they know what that word is. Just one word. Now, Paul has been in product management. He started at Apple, and then went on to the consultancy. He's worked with product managers, and uh, this is one thing that he said today is more important than ever: simplicity. It's simplicity in your communications, simplicity in your products. What does that look like? Looks like this. Okay. This was actually in a blog that I wrote where we talk about the difference between, some remotes that seem to have every button on it that nobody's ever going to use, right? But in the off chance that somebody might use it, that button is there, right? It's completely useless. The other one, of course, is the Apple, which thrives on simplicity. Now, that was a bonus there from my friend Paul. He's a great guy. I've learned a lot from him. But right now, I'm going to talk a little bit about body language because I told you that I use body language in my practice, and I want to show you what we're talking about here. And one of the things that I wanted to do was break a lot of body language myths. There's a lot of misinformation out there about body language. So I've asked Tom, uh, Tom, you're one of the board members here, right?
I'm president of S3PMA.
Okay, great. Tom has agreed to take this test on our behalf. All right. Let's see how he does.
So I'm getting all of you in the audience off the hook by taking one for the team here.
Yeah. And no, don't anybody send him the answer. I'll know if he's cheating, by the way. All right. So let's start. You see this woman here. Tom, what can you tell me about her?
Let's see. First off, with the arms crossed as well as the legs crossed, that's what some people call kind of closed posture. So not feeling particularly open or sharing, feeling a little bit more on a protective stance.
All right.
Uh,
Open or closed?
Closed for sure.
Closed. All right. Good. Uh, how about if you hand someone a contract and you get this smile?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a Mona Lisa smile. I think some people would read it as a positive, but that does not look like looking at the totality of the face. That does not look like an expression of joy so much as an expression of politeness.
Okay. How can you tell when someone is lying? What are the telltale signs?
Whoa, that one I don't know. I don't know if I have a good answer for that one.
Okay. Do you believe that there are telltale signs when someone's lying?
I would say watching poker players and that end of it. If somebody is not a professional deceiver, so that falls in everything from professional poker players to actors and actresses to somebody who's perhaps psychologically different than the norm. Um, I would say there probably are ways that you could tell about like just from a body language standpoint, you can get a sense of at least their reactions to lying.
Okay. What's the most honest part of the body?
I think most people would probably answer the eyes.
What would you answer?
Um, yeah, probably. I'd say kind of more generally facial expressions in general.
What's the proper etiquette for a handshake?
So from the old school, you are supposed to make eye contact, and have a firm handshake, and generally, you know, generally you're saying something while you're shaking their hand, nice to meet you, or some polite phrase that goes with that. I'd say those are kind of the main elements.
Okay. And why is it that body language is scientific? Why is it that everything I'm going to tell you today has actually been, um, you know, is scientific and is something you can bank on?
So the one thing about body language is it ties in with biology and brain wiring, which kind of brings it back to more of a kind of almost a medical type analysis. And you can see from body language a lot of what's going on in the brain as a result of that connection and wiring.
All right, let's walk this back, Tom. And uh, you know, I, it's not working out. We're gonna have to let you go, Tom. You didn't do so. No, look, um, this is exactly why I wanted to have one person go through this. Um, you know, because the understanding of body language has been warped. Now, the first thing is this woman here. She's standing here with her arms folded and her legs crossed. Now, folded arms is one of the most misunderstood body language gestures that there are. It's usually considered blocking, but most of the time it's just pacification. Look, go to a movie theater, and as the lights go down, you'll see people move into this position. Why? Because it feels good. All right. Now, the real tell here, though, is that her legs are crossed. Okay. And the only reason that her legs are crossed, Tom, is because her limbic system in her brain is telling her, you're safe. It's okay to be off balance. But let's say I approach her very fastly, okay, and I scare her. What do you think's going to happen?
The legs will uncross immediately.
That's right. Arms will drop, and she'll be ready to do one of three things: freeze, flee, or fight. Okay. But she's quite comfortable right now. All right. Now, you nailed the smile. This is the smile you were looking for.
Hmm.
What's the difference?
It's not just the corners of the lips, but like the whole face is smiling,
It's the eyes.
teeth and the eyes. Yeah.
It's the eyes. It's always the eyes. All the crow's feet we're trying to hide, those is that's a genuine emotion of joy. These two muscles here are connected. All right. Now, how can you tell when someone is lying? You cannot. You just can't. It's really difficult. There is no single tell. There is no single look. There's no single body position that indicates you're lying.
Hmm.
Now, it's been shown over and over again that us humans are horrible lie detectors. We're really gullible people. And humans are really good liars, many of them. A dangerous combination. All right. So it's very difficult to determine when someone is lying. But this you can bank on. This next thing here, the most honest part of the body is the feet. The feet are always pointed in a direction that the body wants to go. So let's say you're negotiating, and let's just say you happen to have a glass table because negotiators that read body language do things like that. They have swivel chairs and glass tables so they can watch the lower extremities. But you're negotiating with somebody, you're talking to somebody, you're engaging with somebody, and their feet are pointed at you. That's a good sign. Not so much if they're pointed at the door. Okay. Proper etiquette for a handshake is to give what you get. Handshakes are highly cultural. In some cultures, they're taught to give very soft, kind of dead fish handshakes. Not so in Middle America. Not so in Brazil. In Brazil, when men, they don't even really handshake, they do an abrazo. They hug each other. Um, and again, what I'm going to talk to you about today is the body language that I'm looking for when I'm interviewing people about all sorts of things, including, but not limited to, products and communications. So I'm going to stop right now and see if there's any questions before I get into the next set, which is going to be talking about the actual study. Any questions thus far?
And feel free to put it into the chat window if you're in a noisy environment or your microphone's not happy with you.
Well, mic test.
Yes.
Okay, great. David, I would love to know if, because, modern day, we're on Zoom here, right? People can't see my feet. Do you think that's like one of the reasons why we just don't trust people as much on Zoom, right? There's all this study out there that you have better connections when you're in person as opposed to online. That's just immediately where my brain went to.
Yeah, any day of the week and twice on Sunday in person is better
Yeah.
by a large measure. Now, having said that, just from my torso up are numerous tells. Okay. I'll show you some real quick. But if I blade or lean back, that's often a sign that somebody doesn't like what you just said, because people lean away from things they don't like and they lean into things they like, right? Um, the shoulders are a great tell. Remember, we're looking for symmetry in the body. And if you ask somebody, hey, Debashish, did you mail that package? And Debashish says, yeah, I think so. Well, Debashish just gave me a shrug that indicates that he really doesn't know. Is a symmetrical shrug. Now, if I asked him, I said, Debashish, where's that package? And he says, oh, I don't really know, Dave. Well, my guess is Debashish messed up and he doesn't want to tell me. That's what I think. So you gotta watch the way the head moves, the throat, the suprasternal notch, hard swallows, furrows in your brow. I can go on and on and on. And let me tell you, a 4K camera is going to show a lot.
This is going to make us all very self-conscious.
And as it should, because the reason is, once you begin to see how others could possibly see you, you begin to morph in that way. Um, so let me give you some examples here. Did that answer your question, Jennifer?
Yes, and that brilliant, fascinating stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. So in my book, I talk about a multi-billion-dollar manufacturer of some of the most sophisticated components in the world. Tom knows this business, semiconductor business. And the board of directors of this behemoth, they were getting their cage rattled about diversity, equity, inclusion, and sustainability. In addition, their customers, which are design engineers, very highly trained electrical engineers, masters of engineering. They're very highly technical people. They're the people that buy semiconductors from companies like Intel or TI or ADI, and they put them in the boards of the products that their companies manufacture. That's who we were concerned about. Well, a lot of these design engineers were getting older, right? Their customer base was maturing, uh, and some of them were retiring, some of them, you know, had passed away, and up came this new generation of designers. Okay, and they wanted to understand, how do we reach these designers? And oh, by the way, do they care about sustainability? You know, and oh, by the way, what are we going to learn from these guys? Because they're just rational and linear and logical. They don't emote. We said, okay. The board was just getting crazy with all the press that was out there. You could see that some of the press were talking about how money was being pulled from these funds. Um, some of them were talking about how companies were shying away from this, and still others were talking about going dark. You know, do we need to talk about um, uh, you know the uh, sustainability, or do we need to um, hide it? What do we do? And so what happened is that the board called the CEO called the CMO, and the CMO called me, said, "Hey, we got to figure this out, and we got to figure this out fast." So I'm going to stop right here and ask if you guys are still seeing what I'm seeing.
In terms
Yeah.
of the slide, yes.
Yeah, I just want to make sure you're seeing the slide.
So, David, there was a question in the chat
Yes.
from Bem, who says, in relation to what you had mentioned before you got into sustainability,
Yes.
is how do you control for cultural influences when you interpret results or behavior for different participants?
Well, it's a
Their
great
behavior
question.
is generalizable across humans, or are they different?
No, it's a great question, and a very important one. It's very highly cultural, and uh, earlier, before we got onto this session, we were talking about how in some cultures, when people shake their head no, it means yes. A Japanese yes kind of means no. It means yes, we heard you, but no, we're not going to do anything about it until we go back and talk amongst ourselves. So yeah, it's super highly cultural. Handshakes, eye gaze, all of it. Gestures. There's these things called emblems. I don't want to jump ahead too far, but an emblem is a kind of a thing that we all recognize, okay? So if I do this to you, and here in the US, that means thumbs up, okay? Let me tell you, do not do that when you're in Saudi Arabia. It's an insult. Okay, so yeah, super highly cultural. Now, does that answer your question? Whoever asked it?
Oh yeah, it does to an extent. I think what I was wondering was maybe you were doing you were working on a project where you had to go to different countries for a company, but you had to talk to people in the US, and maybe then you had to talk to people in Saudi Arabia, but then you had to come to one conclusion about the result. And so how do you, or you're interviewing people in the US, but they're across, maybe they've been in the US, but then they're from Saudi Arabia, or they're from India, or they're from a different country, but they're all US based customers. And like when you then interpret your results, how do you control for all those differences?
Well, generally what we do is, if it's an international study, will conduct the research first in the US so we get familiar with the material. Then let's say we want to go to Europe, okay? I'll go to the UK and I'll conduct those interviews in English. Now, let's say we want to go to France. Well, I don't speak French, but I know a guy who does. Not only that, he speaks French and German, so that when I go to France, I can also now go to Munich and work with him. So it's all done in the native language. Now, when we step back and we analyze it, the mistake people make is trying to lump Europe as one, treat it as one. It's not. There's all these separate countries, and you need to deal with each one of them. But that's how we try not to generalize. There are certain things that come up that are uniform throughout the world that we'll see. I'll give you an example. I don't know how we're doing on time, but
Okay.
here's an example, a real product development example. We were testing DLP chips, digital light processor chips, and our friends at Texas Instruments were trying to shove these chips into flat TVs, okay? Because flat TVs were all the rage, right? The plasma, LED, Sony had its own version, SRDS or whatever it was called, and TI had the DLP. Now, they put DLPs in RCA TVs. Remember those guys? Right? And we dragged these TVs around the world. They were not branded. But one thing that we could see all over the world is people did not like the form factor for the DLP. And the reason is because it's a projector chip. It's a projector technology. It needs to have depth and width. And so thin was in, right? And TI, no matter what they did, they could never make these TVs thin enough. So what they do, they put them in projectors. Perfect for that. That's an example of something we noticed all over the world. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good.
All right.
Thank you.
Now, in this next study that we got lined up, we had a mix of engineers from Eastern Europe, from East India, from Asia, from Japan. Okay. We set up a study to have the respondents either be interviewed in person or over Zoom. All right. I think we did like 25 interviews, and 18 of them were done over Zoom, and the remaining 7 or 8 were done in person. And all the respondents agreed to be videotaped. All the interviews were conducted by me. And what we did, though, is after the video was done, the interviews were done, we fed the AI-based, we fed the video into an AI-based algorithm that's designed to detect the slightest emotion like I am, okay? And so what we had here is we had a moderator, myself, highly trained in nonverbal intelligence, being backed up by artificial intelligence that's trained to do the same thing. It's like wearing a belt and suspenders to keep your pants up. Okay. Now, how does this work? Well, let me tell you what we were looking for. And this is where you can see a lot of expression and emotion on a Zoom call through micro expressions. What are they? Why they're important? Micro expressions are important because they're universal. If you are human, at some point you will emote in this manner. You will exhibit one of these 7 emotions: happiness, surprise, contempt, disgust, anger, fear, sadness, and the lack of those emotions. And it's all involuntary. You cannot control it. Okay. And these micro expressions are wicked fast. They're split second emotional outbursts. They do not linger, and you need to be trained to spot them. And what are they? Well, imagine showing somebody your product and seeing a sign of contempt, which is an asymmetrical smile, which means they're feeling kind of negative about it. This is what we were looking for, all right? We were looking for the emotional outbursts. Well, all right. So once the AI got a hold of these interviews, how did it work, and how did it present the results? How did we show our client the results? The AI divided all those emotions up into 4 emotional response categories. The first one is called engagement. Remember the color blue. Engagement was, were they answering my questions? Were they looking at me? Did they seem distracted or did they seem focused? That's engagement. We also measured their joy, their happiness, their absolute smiles. Okay, that's yellow. Remember that color. Uh, we also measured what it is that they didn't like, and that's comprised of the negative emotions like fear, anger, contempt, disgust, sadness. Okay. But what we were really looking for were contradictions between what people said and what their bodies were saying. So, what I'm about to show you is a readout that looks like an EKG. It's an emotional readout of a conversation that I had with this guy here, this design engineer. All right. Now, he right there is in a classic smile. And if I ripped off that security band-aid, it would hurt for sure. But you would also be able to see that he's in a classic smile with using his eyes. All right. So while I'm talking to him, we measured his engagement. And this is what it looks like. From the moment I started talking to him to the minute I stopped, he was very highly engaged. And that means he was focused. He was participating. I didn't have to pull answers out of him. We also measured his joy end to end. And you can see that we had an engaging, joyful conversation. We really were asking him questions that nobody else had ever asked a design engineer. Like, why did you become a design engineer? Okay. So then we began to talk about certain vendors. And if you recall, our client was trying to tell us that, by the way, design engineers, they don't emote. They're not like the rest of us. They're logical, linear, rational. Well, what we have here is definitive proof that this is not the case. That design engineers emote just like the rest of us. And here's what happened. I asked this guy what he felt about brand X. And all of a sudden, you can see a smile on his face. And you can see when we got the AI readout back that there was a spike in joy and a spike in engagement. Okay. What does that mean? Well, what it means to me is he's leveling with me. Okay. He's leveling with me. He really liked this company and he gave us a lot of reasons why. There's a lot of positive emotion, right? Now, we asked him, okay, what about brand Y? What do you think about brand Y? Well, as soon as we asked him about brand Y, we see a different reaction. We see a lot of negativity. All right. Right there in that picture, you see lip compression. Compressed lips is a highly reliable indicator of stress or dislike. And we caught it. I saw it, and the AI caught it. And we also noticed a drop in the engagement and a drop in joy, a spike in surprise, and a spike in contempt, the purple color. Okay. He doesn't like this brand. Okay. Now, what does it look like when they try and tell us something, but their body says something else? The software is designed to look for contradictions, as am I. Here's another gentleman later on in the study. After we started talking about suppliers, we started talking about sustainability. And I asked this gentleman, I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, where a 1 is sustainability is unimportant and a 10 is sustainability is extremely important, how important is it that the manufacturer from whom you buy semiconductors has a positive sustainable record in your selection process? How important? Well, what we got was, oh, that's a 6 or a 7. But look at that visage there in the center. That is a classic pose of surprise. Jaw drops, eyes are wide open. Why? He's absolutely stunned that I asked him about this. Okay. He couldn't understand. And so I saw that and I said, tell me a little bit more about this. And turns out that what he's trying to tell me was, yeah, personally, it's a 6 or a 7. Nobody likes to talk against sustainability, but, listen, I haven't been able to get my semiconductor parts for 52 weeks. I'm not really concerned about sustainability. And what we saw here in corroborating this was that he absolutely flatlined on me. There's a surprise. There's no joy. Engagement drops. He's just like stunned why I asked. Now, had we not stopped and asked that, we would have gone on thinking it was a 6 or a 7. But we didn't. I caught it, and we later found it again. And by the way, when we show this to the client, there are actual video snippets of these people. So these aren't static. I can't show you those. Now, you're wondering, okay, so what? Okay, well, here's the thing is we saved our client a lot of money by not having them spin their entire communications around sustainability. Okay. Sure, they needed to talk about it. They needed to put sustainability somewhere on the site. But what they really need to be talking about is channel management and lead times. That's what they really want to hear. And so we were able to help them maneuver. In fact, they like this research so much, they asked to do this amongst procurement. And when we did that amongst procurement, they got walloped by procurement. I mean, badly walloped, people just calling out the client on video. You really can't argue with stuff like that. But the good news is they were able to fix that issue. Now, that's communications-based research. I do want to let you know that many of the same techniques I've showed you here today, we used with hardware. Now, obviously not here. This is the Palm Pilot. I'm bringing up here some of our claim to fame of hardware products that we've helped launch. If you ever wondered why the Palm Pilot was the size that it was, Well, that's because we did a study, okay, and we invited people to come into a facility and we gave them blocks of wood in various sizes. And one of those sizes people would pick up and they'd put in their lapel or put in their purse. And that was the size we went with. Kind of as simple as that. Uh, if you remember this guy, and if you don't know this guy, you probably need to get out. He's everywhere. In 2013, we helped develop a new category of inkjet printers called the super tank category, where those annoying, expensive cartridges that always ran out when you needed them the most were replaced by a big vat of ink. That, if you printed 300 pages or less per month, it would last you 2 years. As I mentioned, we talked about Texas Instruments and its journey with DLP. Done a lot of work in medical electronics, gamma knives, and imaging devices. Here is helping an external disk drive manufacturer segment its customers. And then a lot of work in TV, projectors, robotics, you name it. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I'm here to be able to answer questions for as long as people have them.
So that's the cue for any of you, if you've got additional questions or things that occurred to you as David was going through the slides. And for those of us that have been in focus groups and different sorts of testing where there was a camera looking at what you were looking at on the screen. They're doing things with eye tracking, and there's all sorts of technologies out there that are tied in with this. I'm sure some of you have some questions. We already had a couple of really good ones earlier. So feel free, if you don't want to unmute, feel free to put it in the chat window. Debashish and I are more than happy to read any questions. If your microphone isn't working, that's just fine.
Hey,
Any
David, I have
thoughts?
a quick question.
Yes, please, go ahead.
So I've been in a lot of seminars and events where everybody's needing to go really, really fast, 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 fast. And it was interesting. Yesterday's panel was a disagreement on how fast you go. Somebody says, no, no, you got to figure out your product market fit before you run. The other go, no, no, you got to just go after the money. How do you address those type of people who want to say, let's go fast and go after the money? Because I know that's the wrong thing, but I wanted to get your perspective on it.
Well, you can pay me now or pay me later. Honestly, I've had companies that have done just this. They've followed the money, they've rushed out, only to come back and say, help, we need to do this all over again. It's just always much worse when you do that. This research, a lot of it we've been able to speed up and get it done for these fast product development life cycles. And sometimes it's hard to tell these private equity companies and these billionaires that they're wrong or they need help. I mean, that's what I've noticed over my career. And I've noticed a lot of companies do it right. And a lot of companies, most companies don't. Does that answer your
Thank you.
question?
Yeah.
It reminds me a bit of, there was a Google product manager who presented some years ago at the Google I/O conference. And the title of his presentation I thought was great. It was Building the Wrong Thing Really, Really Fast. And he was telling a story of this project that they jumped on right away and they started building, and it was only when they had prototypes out and started putting it in front of people, they realized that wasn't really what was needed. And it was a picture perfect example of just what you've been talking about this evening.
Yeah, I got asked, doing a lot of podcasting now, and you know, people ask me, how can you ask people about products? They don't know what they want. Steve Jobs didn't need to ask people what they wanted, and Elon Musk didn't need to ask people what they wanted. And my answer to them is, well, you're not Steve Jobs, and you're not Elon Musk, and most of us aren't. And to not get customer feedback one way or another, either do it internally or hire somebody like us. I mean, especially now, mistakes are catastrophic when they're made. Um, and my sense of why products fail a lot of times is not because the product stinks or there's no support. It's because of internal fighting between the powers that be.
We've got a question in from Mike, and he was asking a bit about if you don't have a full budget for, AI and a full focus group and psychometrician and all those sort of things with the video technology and all of that. Is there any way to kind of scale this down to a smaller size? So if you're a smaller startup and you want to just get uh, some of this implemented within your own smaller startup or smaller group?
Yeah, we generally work, as I said, with very large companies, but we also work with mid-sized companies and occasionally well-heeled startups. And one of the things that we'll do is, instead of jumping out into the market with a big fat quantitative study that involves thousands upon thousands of interviews, what we'll do is a small number of interviews, sometimes as small as 8 or 12. And you can do that internally with customers, if you want to do that. If you want to bone up on your body language, you can get trained, or you can watch a lot of TV with the sound off. And you will learn how to read body language in that manner. But you don't have to have big research studies to get this done. But to bring customers into your building and show them some plans, absolutely.
Very interesting. Makes me wonder if folks, if you have somebody who's in the room with a hearing impairment, whether they're more than usual picking up on things that are missed by the vast majority of other folks in the room.
I just had a conversation with a gentleman who is deaf, and he is able to talk, but his hearing is severely impaired. His body language acumen was off the charts for sure. Absolutely. Same with blind people. Their hearing begins to pick up, and their smell begins to pick up because they lost their eyesight. So yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions for folks? Just
I had
if you shy, go ahead.
Yeah. I had a question. Can I go?
Sure.
Somebody else.
Sure.
Oh yeah. Okay. I had a question about around the skill level, like when you're able to get, like, how much skill do you require to be able to get someone you're interviewing to react in certain ways? Like, is that dependent on, like, it feels like some people are able to craft questions or engage with someone you're talking to in a way that elicits more than somebody else, or like certain questions, or is it a rapport thing, or is it a like skill and experience thing?
Absolute skill. It's not unlike speaking another language. Okay. How many of you here are polyglots? Speak another language. Okay. This is just another language. This is the language of the body. So, I train people. I can give you, 60 minutes of body language training that would resonate with you. I can train you and your organization for a half day, full day, or I can certify you. And you can become very highly trained at my level if you wanted to be certified. There's other ways to get certified as well. You can take it as far as you want it, but it's like anything else. If it fascinates you, and I can tell you that it's changed my life and my research practice in ways that I never thought it would, because it really is very powerful. Imagine, I can't understand why, if somebody here is in human resources, why aren't people in human resources trained in body language? Beyond me.
Yeah, I was
Same.
thinking earlier when you were in your presentation of just how similar or just maybe adjacent this is to emotional intelligence, right? It's just interacting with people.
It's all emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how, well, little people know about it, and what they think is right is not. And how a lot of leaders really can't distinguish when people are picking up what they're throwing down or not. Um, and it's also one of those things that will help you in your personal life. So I don't have to say very much to my wife. I can just look and tell, what's going on. And, uh, that reduces the amount of lack of communications and sensitivity, because I see, okay, she's definitely not ready for this now. Right. So, same with the people that you work with or your kids. Oh man, your kids asking about their homework. No, watch them squirm now when they're telling you how much their homework is done. Um, uh, Even your pets.
Any tidbits on, are there certain ways to ask questions or things that you've learned in terms of, and I've seen this with survey design, that you see a question and a psychometrician will look at this and say, hang on, I've got a better question. They'll draw a line through it and rewrite the question. And you're saying it's the same, it's asking for the same piece of information, but how you ask it elicits a different level of response. And have you seen this a similar thing with body language responses, and what have you learned in that space?
Well, yeah, there's ways to write questions and ways not to write questions. Our stance is that whatever we are testing deserves to be fairly tested. And so we ask questions in certain orders, in certain ways to get at that fairness and that objectivity. Same with body language. Now, if I walk into a situation and my hair's on fire and, you know, I'm nervous and flustered and look like there's not an ounce of control in me, how do you think that's going to go with the person I'm trying to talk to? If they see that I'm nervous or that I'm not confident, uh, they don't want to pay attention to me. They don't want to participate. The idea here is somebody was asking about moving fast, right? The thing that annoys me today about the younger generation, if you have younger kids, and I do, they talk so darn fast. It is, you know, it's annoying. I mean, it's just like slow down. And the reason is because people will pay attention to you more if you are smoother, have a little bit of a different delivery, are not ramming words down their minute as fast as they possibly could, but waiting for some sort of feedback so you can determine, what is your next question? So, and then it becomes, what do you do with that? Let's say you see something on somebody's face, a sign of contempt. A sign of contempt is this. Remember that. You'll see it later tonight or tomorrow, the next day. I want you to reach out to me when you do see it and tell me I saw contempt, because people they can't control that. I just did. But when you're talking to them, especially kids, and you see that, well, what do you do with that? Do you ignore that? Well, no. No. You see that, you stop and you say, hi, not hi, but you see contempt and you say, uh, excuse me, um, is there anything here that bothers you about what it is I just said? Okay. Or do you have any concerns about this? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, I just saw a concern on your face. So now I don't want to let that go because, he may cough something up that I can refute. But if I don't try, he's lost. He's gone. Okay. Now, there's another technique that we use, and I can stay on and talk as long as I want, but this is as long as you want. Um, but this is a great technique, and this is a way to get somebody to emote without even asking a question. And I was doing a study for one of the largest printer manufacturers in the world, and we were talking to their channel. These are value-added resellers, okay, that sell printers to small businesses. And we were going around the country, and one of these printer manufacturers kept coming up as a bad player, a bad actor in the channel. And so while I was interviewing one particular VAR, I knew that he resold this particular brand of printer. But instead of asking him, hey, how do you feel about brand X? I just leaned in and said, brand X. And pow, he leans back. What came out of his mouth was, oh, they're great. But what his body said, leaned back, his head went back, and then I got a huge cathartic exhale. And he says, well, and I says, what do you mean they're great? He says, okay, well, they're great in the sense that everybody knows brand X, but I'm never going to do business with them again because they violated deal registration. Okay. I went to one of my customers to sell them 50 printers. The next thing I know, brand X is trying to outsell me. Not going to work with them again. Now, somebody else might have let that go in that conversation. But that's a technique that works because we emote faster than we think. I saw the emotion on his face long before he answered me. Very powerful stuff.
So, David, I have two questions.
Sure.
I'll ask the second one first, actually, which is, does the body language change significantly in the group setting versus one-on-one? And when might it be better to have conversations in a group setting versus in an individual setting?
Brilliant and intuitive question. So, yeah, the answer is body language absolutely is affected in a group environment. It's called groupthink. And there are ways to mitigate it, but you can never really control for it entirely. So, focus groups have been misused over the years pretty badly. if you're going to evaluate a product, if you're going to ask somebody's opinion about the product, it is always best to do that individually. That's because there's nobody else there to bias them, except for me or the moderator, of course. So if you're an in-depth interview, you would use that for evaluating ads, evaluating products. Okay. Now, what are groups for? Well, groups are great for spontaneous ideas of product usage or exploration on certain topics. Groups are great for that, but they're not great for evaluation. So, we take that very seriously when we make a methodological recommendations. And yeah, clients would much rather sit through a 2-hour focus group than sit through, 60-minute interviews during the day. Can't we just do groups, But no, we can't. So yeah, it does matter.
Okay,
Very
great.
good question.
Thanks. And the other question is, can you give us some idea of what kind of AI model you used to detect micro expressions on faces?
No.
Okay.
So, and here's the reason it is developed. It is a proprietary LLM, closed loop, developed by a company in Mumbai. And the software is learning with each study that it does for me and other research companies that use the technology. Okay, so it's constantly learning, but only within that group of respondents. In other words, we're not hanging out there with ChatGPT or Azure, or all these other. I don't even know what we may be on the Amazon platform, but anyway, it's a great tool, and we vetted it very carefully. And the reason that it's a great tool is because it's based on the facial action coding system, FACS. And if you don't know what that is, it's a manual that has alphanumeric codes that help graphics artists make characters animate. All right. So all these high-end animated movies are using facial action coding system to make a character smile. There's a code for that. Or make them frown. There's a code for that. Okay. And the military uses this. And the software, I use it. And this software uses it. And so that's the gold standard for me, because I looked at a lot of other programs before I settled on this one. And these guys were by far the most accurate. One of the things we learned is that the AI was not really all that great at determining between a social smile and a genuine smile. There are lots of smiles, but that was hard for it. Now it can, because it's learned.
Do you think that there'll be more tools coming along? Because I'm terrible about learning new languages. This would be another language, right? I would love to have this, especially in a sales meeting or a product user experience meeting.
Well, with this language, you don't really have to speak, you just have to look. And it's just like anything else, it's a skill that can be developed. Now, look, there are people, lawyers, for example, that have a real keen sixth sense about people and their emotions. I always had a very finely tuned research antenna, but I developed that. But I can tell you that it wouldn't take very long for you to be able to learn the basics about body language. I read a book. There's a book by Joe Navarro, ex-FBI. He trained me. He wrote a book called What did he write? Everybody Talks. Everybody Talks. Great book. You'll learn tons there. You can do this. Look, I'm trying to speak Russian. That's tough. So, but there's lots of things you can do. You can watch TV with the sound off. You can practice in front of your mirror. You can practice in front of Zoom. Okay.
Thank you.
So, any last, anybody got any wrap-up questions here? If not, we will move on to a couple of previews for next month's meeting, but want to give one more chance in case anybody has any additional questions. It's been has ranged across a lot of interesting ideas. Especially the animation side, I hadn't expected to hear that there was a connection with that. I've got some friends that work with software like Blender to do 3D animations, and I had no idea there was an entire
Yeah.
system for facial expressions.
I know Blender. I have a son that's a graphics artist that uses Blender that reads the fax manual.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And, he was making me all sorts of stuff that we're using through Blender.
Handy to have that skill in the family somewhere.
Yeah. Well, but bless his soul, AI is doing the same thing now, really doing a lot of, ChatGPT just came out with something that's very powerful with regard to drawing stuff. But there's something about, somebody drawing and using AI that brings out a better product than if they don't have any artistic experience. That I can tell you for sure.
I think I'm guessing it probably parallels somewhat. If you have a professional writer, they can come out with things with, they can polish things up to feel much more authentic. And I think a similar thing, if folks have a lot of artistic talent, then that's always going to be a step ahead, I think.
Yeah, the key here to sum up, and I'm happy to stay. I'm not going to do anything else. But to sum up, what you really want is to be smooth. You want to make people comfortable. We're creatures of comfort. And this has been shown over and over again. You have two gas stations. One gas station is on one corner, another gas station is on the other corner. One corner is very brightly lit, but has very expensive gas. The other gas station is on the other corner. It is dimly lit with cheap gas. Guess where people go? They go to the highly lit gas station because they're comfortable. And I see some of you shaking your head. No, okay, I get that. But, most people in these studies would do that, right? So, they study everything about human behavior. You go nuts if you really wanted to.
So
I
David,
was shaking my head no, but I was also saying fascinating at the same time. So
Well, some people have challenged me on that. No, I'd go over there and do that, and I'd go into the dark one. Okay, good luck with that. But I'm
I would
talking
go to the
about
bright one. Yeah, no.
studies. Yeah. Well, it's no accident that I wore the color blue tonight. Now, why is that? Well, because study after study after study shows that you have two people and they deliver the same message, but one guy wears a blue suit, the other guy wears a brown suit. Blue suit wins, hands down. So I advise people not necessarily to wear brown for business purposes, for personal purposes, that's fine. But if you're going to meet somebody for the first time, wear blue.
I want to say something. I've worked with David before. I just want to So he's a master at this. I've worked with him on several projects in the past. David didn't pay me to say anything,
Brooke.
but hey, David. But watching you work with a crowd in focus groups is amazing. Like you said, like being smooth. David's a master at reading a room, and what I've seen him work when we're working on a script, but then he's very attuned at getting deeper than I've ever seen. I've been product manager for many, many years and lots of focus groups, but watching David work and what he preaches is absolutely right on. I can see, I've seen him before, like see someone sort of like not saying anything, or maybe there's a group dynamic he's into and takes the direction and goes with things very smoothly. He's incredibly polished. So if you ever have a chance to work with him, I highly recommend it.
Oh, Brooke, man, how much do I owe you for that?
Give me a lunch, man, that's it. But no, seriously, he's really great at this.
Thank you for saying that. You know, it's fun. Brooke and he's actually seen me do groups all over and some complicated stuff as well. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be ungodly expensive. Lots of tools out there you can use. And if you have any further questions, reach out to me. I got a ton of stuff on LinkedIn, a ton of stuff on my website. And Debashish, let me know when you've had enough of me, because I'll sit here. I got like 40 hours. We could stay up all night doing one-nighter.
I've got an early morning flight, so that'll work. But
Yeah, so but there was one question that came in, David, on the chat from
Yeah,
Sam, who's
sure.
asking if the book that you were referring to is called What Everybody Is Saying by Joe Navarro. Is that the book you were referring to?
Yeah, let me think what every body is saying. Every body is two words. Play on
Right.
words, right? Yeah. By
Okay.
Joe Navarro.
Yep.
Great book. And it
Sanders put a link in the chat window if anyone is
Yeah.
looking at that bit. So thank you, Sander.
Sure. And my book is just called Backbone, and it's again, it talks about what I think this job is and my personal story of resilience to stay out of a wheelchair during the last several years. So I'm real grateful to be here and be able to do this. Was a time when I didn't think I would, and having a lot of fun with it.
Very
So
good.
I'm happy to stay for
Okay.
as long as I can.
We can, yeah, it's nice to be able to have a little bit of fun while we're dealing with our day jobs, as it were. I just wanted to put in a plug before we're done, and mention to everyone we are busy at work with our next meeting, which will be happening in June. That is currently slated to happen as an in-person meeting in San Francisco. So for those of you that are San Francisco adjacent, keep your eye on the SVPMA website. We're working on nailing down some of the details of that, so we should have some of that within a week or so. The other thing is, if you have colleagues that, oh, and Debashish just put the link to David's book in the chat window as well. So feel free. Actually, Debashish, could you post that to everyone, and then folks have that as well. The other thing is, if you had colleagues that missed this evening's presentation and could benefit from it, and you say, "Oh, you should have been there," we do try and get the videos for the meetings posted to the SVPMA YouTube channel within a couple of weeks. And if you keep an eye on, or you do a search for SVPMA under YouTube, we pop up there. If you want to be notified when it gets posted, you can hit the subscribe and the subscribe and the alert button, and that will send you a note when the new video gets posted. And with that, really hope that you can join us in San Francisco in person for the June meeting. But before we wrap up here, I just want to give a virtual round of applause for David, and thank you for your time. This was a fascinating topic, especially with some of the AI twists and the other things that are really cutting edge. And I think that's one of the advantages we have being in Silicon Valley.
Well, Tom, coming up, there's a new technology that's going to be awesome for Zoom. It's digital gloves where you can actually reach through the screen and smack somebody, wake them up. I'm betting on that. And listen, reach out to me, and thank you so much. It's a lot of fun. So,
Yeah. Thank
Thank
you
you
all.
again, David.
all right.
Yes, thanks, and hope to see some of the rest of this audience in person in San Francisco. If you are not adjacent to San Francisco, then our July meeting will most likely be virtual. So we'll see you all soon. Thanks for coming.